But then it's like once you first have like Tyler said, as soon as you have that first like super amazing interaction and people understand you're like, oh my gosh, like I feel like a superhero right now.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Trailblazers podcast, where we continue our series of short clips. Today, the topic we're going to be focusing on is language learning. So, Dave and I have both learned a second language later in our life. We've had to pick it up, in our mid-20s now. So, for me, it's been French. So, I moved to Montreal, and for my job and for living here, I've learned French over the course of 2 years. And Dave, it's been Mandarin. So, he's lived in Singapore, lived in China. And he's picked up Mandarin along the way, and he's very fluent in it. So we both have our tips on what can help you effectively learn a new language and kind of the best way to go about it to be successful. And today we're going to go over a few of our top tips. So Dave, let's kick it off. What do you think are a couple of your top tips if somebody's just starting a language? What would you say are some important things to keep in mind as they start that journey?
Yes, Tyler. Okay, so for learning a language right off the bat, I have a couple of tips. I think the first thing that I want to talk about is making sure you're having fun with it. Because I think when it comes to learning a language, especially learning a language as an adult, you don't want to put too much stress on yourself because you probably have already a lot of responsibilities and other things that you're doing, maybe your relationships or your work. So you want to make sure when you're coming and learning a language that you're having a really good time and you're enjoying that process of, say, learning something new. And then the next thing I think is good with it is having a simple goal in mind of what you're trying to accomplish with the language at the beginning. A lot of people think that when they start a language, they need to become perfectly bilingual in a language in order to be effective with that particular language. But a lot of times, even just having the bare basics and, say, being able to go and have a simple conversation with a native speaker is really all you need. For example, I've seen a colleague here in New York. He is taking the elevator, and one of the persons working in the elevator is fluent in Spanish and fluent in English. And so sometimes he'll just have a simple Spanish conversation with the person in the elevator. And he might not be maybe extremely fluent by any means, but it does have kind of a bond or a connection and allow him to, practice a little bit with that language. So I think, having these kind of like simple, fun goals in mind can really be a high motivational factor when we're just starting out in learning a language and not spending too much time getting worried about like the fine details of maybe the things within a language. Tyler, what are a couple of your top tips with, say, starting out and learning a language?
I'll piggyback off what you said about having fun there. So the main thing I've learned is, it's not something that's gonna happen overnight. Don't believe the info marketing that is to learn a language in 2 weeks or learn a language in 2 months. That's bullshit. It's you're gonna be doing this for a couple of years. So you want to find something that's consistent. And so the only way you're gonna do something consistent is if you enjoy it, or something you can do it like every single day. So I think my messaging would be like something that, if you think about what's like effective for learning a language, what's better for you learning a language is something that's maybe 60% effective that you'll do every day, rather than something that's 100% effective that you're going to do for a week and then quit, right? So for me, I know like a big part of learning French, I spent listening to sports radio because I like sports, I like hockey and stuff like that. So if I listen to sports radio in French, it would be like, oh, I'd be listening to the sports news and everything. And the learning the secondary language was almost just like a secondary activity in there that I was just doing it. I didn't even realize it. I was more focused on like, oh, okay, they're talking about hockey, I want to learn this and that. And so it made it enjoyable for me to do it every day. So you got to find something that's consistent. So if you can find something like that, and then you set aside a time every day, you don't just get up and be like, oh, randomly I'm going to find 15 or 30 minutes to practice this language. It's like, have an hour set out and be like, boom, this is the only time I'm kind of gonna do this. So that would be one tip that I have. Another one is to find a supportive teacher. It's always good to, you can practice in public as much as you want, and that's where you should be. You should be really using that as a playground to practice the language as much as you can, but you should have a teacher that you work with. And I found that, it's good to go on a platform like italki and maybe explore a whole bunch of different teachers that are out there, and see what works for you. But you really get a lot of the benefits when you work and build a relationship with someone over a prolonged period of time, because they kind of know your weak spots with the language. They'll, adjust to your learning style and be like, oh, I need to help this person here with this word. Or they like to be, there's a lot of teachers that'll maybe let you go for 5 or 10 minutes because they want you to kind of flow into the language, and they'll correct you after. There's other teachers that'll stop you as soon as you screw up a word or stuff like that. So the teacher will adjust to you, you'll adjust to the teacher. The most important thing with that is that you feel like you're in a supportive environment, so it's stress-free. I found the biggest struggle for me when I learned a language is that stressful scenarios, or when I was nervous, would make me like forget half of my lexicon of words and stuff like that. So it's about creating a really stress-free environment. And if you have a teacher over the long term that you build a relationship with, then that can really help a lot. And I thankfully, was able to develop that as well. Dave talked about speaking, in public and maybe on the elevator and stuff like that. And everybody's a little bit different. For some people, that's really easy to kind of put yourself out there and just like try to speak in public. For other people, for me, it was really difficult. I was, especially when you learn a language as an adult, I feel like you don't want to like look stupid in public, or you don't want to be, it's easier to do that when you're a kid or a teenager or something like that. But we're more wired as adults to not want to do that. And what I learned after a while, after my level got higher and higher, and I had like my first really successful interaction where I had a conversation with somebody. Obviously, there's like 100 failures before that point. The thing that I would say to somebody at the beginning is once you have that first successful interaction, that feels way, way better than 100 bad interactions combined, right? So, and it'll motivate you to do more and more. So it's one of those things, it's like momentum. Once you have one successful conversation, even if you're like more introverted, you'll be trying every single day because you kind of want that euphoria again of speaking another language to somebody in the local population. So it's one of those things you just kind of got to put yourself out there and keep on trying, and then it'll come faster and faster for sure. So I mean, those just starting out, those would be my tips. Dave, do you have anything else that you think you would add for language learners?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would touch on, and I know you're just talking about it too, Tyler, is the kind of I would call celebrate the small wins. You're going to have so many failures before you have positive interactions. I remember in my course of learning Mandarin, I had so many cases that, like, especially in the first 6 months, the first year, the first couple of years, I'd be trying to like express an idea or go out in public and talk to people, especially when I was living in China. I remember just going and buying groceries. And I remember one of the first times I tried to go and speak Mandarin at a grocery store. And I was asking, I think, for like a plastic bag, or like sometimes people would ask me questions and I'd just stand there like a deer in the headlights. I'd be like, have no idea what you're talking about right now. But then it's like once you first have like Tyler said, as soon as you have that first like super amazing interaction and people understand you, and like you're like, oh my gosh, like I feel like a superhero right now. I am like able to communicate with people and they completely understand me, right? And then after that, you're like, oh my gosh, I can actually use this language and communicate with people, right? So then it's like celebrating these small wins, and it doesn't even have to be a huge thing. It can just be like a small conversation, or like you remember something from a class and like somewhere, or maybe a word that you tried to learn 5 times, you finally are able to pull out of your head the sixth time or something. And these things they get easier and easier the more time that you spend learning the language. And so as long as you're just patient with it, and like Tyler's mentioned, you have some type of like routine or coordination of how you learn that language, all these things get immensely easier as you spend more time in learning the language. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all that we have to say for some of our top tips on starting out and learning a language. We're going to do a few more of these videos. Probably going to talk a little bit about maybe our experiences of like myself learning Mandarin, Tyler learning French, some maybe context of like where you could utilize the language. So if you guys are enjoying this, just let us know. If you want us to do videos in frickin' French or in Mandarin, like let us know. We'll do it. Just let us know. If you want to use our italki referral links to give us money, let us know. Click on that, sign up, go learn a language, give us some cash. We'd be super happy about that. But yeah, if you guys are enjoying the videos, as always, hit that like button, hit that subscribe, give us give us some props, and yeah, we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.
Catch you next time, everybody.